Man grabbed from his garage, but police say they found the getaway car. 22-year-old Wan Zhenlu was attacked and abducted by masked men. Adrian Chung joins us live outside of Lu's apartment near Highway 7 and Birchmount. And Adrian, police say they are deeply worried about Lu's safety.
Yeah, Dwight, they still have not heard from Wan Zhenlu. And this recovered van is really the first major public detail that police have been able to release to the public of what they have found. The same van that Lu was forced into in what police call a violent struggle and kidnapping. This black Dodge Caravan was found in Toronto more than 24 hours after it was used in Wan Zhenlu's kidnapping. Police say tips from the public over the past 48 hours helped them find it.
The car is going to be poured through by our forensic identification unit, again, who are some of the finest in this country. So they're going to be looking for any sort of evidence that might be able to depict or determine who was in that vehicle and lead us to where Mr. Lu might be.
Police released still images from the surveillance footage that caught the whole abduction. 22-year-old Lu, also known as Peter, is a Chinese national and student at Seneca College. He arrived at his apartment's underground garage on Saturday evening with a female friend. 3 suspects jumped out of a waiting van. They tasered Lu, dragged him into the van, then drove off. Neither the suspects nor Lu have been heard from since.
Let me be very clear to the suspects, if they are watching this, now is the time to seek legal counsel and turn yourself in. Now is the time to let Mr. Lu go, put him in a safe location. We're going to get him, and he'll be safe from there.
Now, Lu's family is now on their way to Canada from China. There's been no communication from either Lu or his captors, no ransom note that has been sent to the family, and police have not released what they believe what the possible motive could be. And so they're continuing to call on the public's help to help find Lu and the suspects here. Dwight, I'll send it back to you.
Thank you, Adrian. Police are asking residents in Rosedale to be on alert after what they are calling 2 disturbing incidents where teenagers were approached by a stranger.
When a stranger does approach you, make eye contact, make a lot of noise, go to a place of safety, and never ever get into the person's vehicle.
Investigators say in separate incidents on March 7th and March 15th, 2 teenage girls were approached by a man in a car, police releasing this image of the suspect vehicle. In the first incident, a 14-year-old was approached near Elm and Sherbourne. The man followed the girl in his car, then asked her to get into the vehicle. When she refused, he tried to grab her, but she got away. Just days later, in the same area, a 13-year-old was followed by a man in a car who made sexual comments to her. The suspect is described as being in his 20s or early 30s. He was driving a silver Nissan Altima.
I think everybody would admit that mistakes have been made. The wounds are always open, to be honest. They don't go away.
After years of failed trials, the family of Radiohead drum technician Scott Johnson is looking for answers. Tonight, the 33-year-old was killed when a stage collapsed in Toronto ahead of a concert at Downsview. Today was the first day of a coroner's inquest into his death. We'll take you there a little later in the show. Pot shops will open in Ontario next Monday, but just how many is still a question tonight. Farah Morelli joins us live now from Queen's Park. And Farah, what's the message from the government today?
Well, in short, Dwight, the message is you'll have to wait and see. The details are pretty vague on just how many of these shops are actually going to be ready by next week. Remember back in January, the Ontario government announced the first 25 companies that could apply for these retail cannabis licenses. And the plan was that by April 1st, which is, again, 1 week today, those operators would actually open up storefronts where you could physically walk in and buy cannabis. Now it's unclear how many are actually going to be able to do that on April 1st. Today, the Minister of Finance acknowledged that some of those operators are actually still going through the regulatory process with the Alcohol and Gaming Commission of Ontario.
You'll see on April 1st exactly how many will open, but we're really looking forward to our first foray into private retail of cannabis. And of course, you still have the Ontario Cannabis Store website. We will have stores open on April 1st, and I know that the AGCO is continuing to work to make sure that the 25 that have been approved get their stores open in a timely manner.
Another big question is which of these stores are actually going to be ready by this deadline. We know from the AGCO that these operators had to go through two key hurdles. One was to get a retail operating license, and the second was to get a store authorization. And according to the AGCO, 10 of those operators have gone through 2 of those steps. So this is a map here of which those, or what shops those are across Ontario. And if you look at those numbers, you'll notice that, of course, only 10 of those locations have passed those first 2 key steps. After those key 2 steps are passed, those stores also have to go through an inspection. So that's not the end of the road for them. As for those 15 other operators and locations, the AGCO says they're still in varying parts or stages of the regulatory process, and some are actually still at the stage where they're putting up public notices.
So far, I'm sure the opposition had something to say about this today.
They definitely did, Dwight, and predictably, they're taking aim at the government for its plans, saying that it was problematic from the get-go. What they're saying today is that these operators didn't have enough time to actually understand how this application process looked like before they got involved in it, and they're calling it a mess at this point.
I think had this government consulted more effectively with the communities, made sure that those businesses were going to be ready for the April 1st deadline, we wouldn't see this botched plan moving forward.
Now, while the details are vague from the government as to how many of these shops are going to be ready, one thing that we do know is that they could face fines, hefty fines, if they don't open by April 1st. Depending on how late they open, Dwight, those fines could be as high as $50,000.
Wow. Thank you, Farah. Now, some experts are warning that no matter how many cannabis stores open on Monday, they're going to struggle to draw customers away from illegal pot suppliers. Ali Shahsan is live tonight outside one of the shops set to open next week. And Ali, it all comes down to a matter of price and convenience.
And variety too, Dwight. Future pot shops like this one, the Honey Pot on Queen Street here, are only going to be selling dry flower and pre-rolled joints and oils. No edibles or vape pens. Things that will be legal in Canada, they're just not legal quite yet. Some say after this initial excitement wears off, people are just going to go back to dialing their dealers.
Tokyo Smoke is a brand we started in Toronto. This is where we were born and raised, and the fact that, you know, we literally had our first store in an alley, and now that a lottery winner has chosen to use our brand and to use it in such an amazing, iconic space, it still gives me shivers.
A dream come true for the people behind Tokyo Smoke, the cafe turned nationwide cannabis franchise.
We've been preparing for potential retail in Ontario for a long time.
After public consultations wrap April 2nd, their flagship store in the old HMV space at Yonge and Dundas Square is slated to open soon after. Brampton's only pot shop, Ganjika House, is hustling to open as soon as next week.
There are people who are actually passing by just to make sure it's real. This would be the entrance here after you present your valid ID and you're over 19. You can enter the store here. There are going to be glass displays here that are going to be lit and, showcasing the accessories.
As we've seen across the country, from the Maritimes to the prairies to BC, these grand openings are like Bud Boxing Day.
We are getting ready to meet the demand. We are ready to meet the demand.
But is the demand going to be there once the excitement wears off? And what if you realize your dealer is cheaper?
Cannabis consumers are like any other consumer. Like people will drive extra distance to get cheap gas, cannabis consumers will also shop around. And if it means that they can get a better deal right now on the black market from their existing supplier in a convenient way, it's still going to be tough for the government to compete against that.
You have to provide an option that is preferable to what they're doing already. So I think the pressure on price in terms of how we can combat the black market or illicit market is a substantial thing that we have to worry about as a brand and as an industry.
So it's really easy to get caught up in the excitement of like day one when these stores finally open. What do you think these customers should pause and think about besides just what type of bud they're going to buy?
They should definitely consider where this all came from.
Local cannabis activist Dana Carabon says socially conscious consumers like him won't be lining up for legal weed anytime soon.
If you look at from the beginning of cannabis prohibition has caused countless arrests, often people of color. There's 500,000 Canadians with cannabis possession records, and cannabis amnesty is trying their best to get rid of that through expungement, not pardons. Everyone should be allowed to participate in the cannabis regime. We just need to understand the context of where we're coming from, because then all of a sudden just become legal. It's taken many, many years of hardships.
Last month, the federal government said they are going to introduce pardons for people with simple possession charges against them. That's not the perfect solution in the eyes of some of these activists. As for these legal operators, we're going to see them promote a lot their customer service and their safety as their edge on the competition, the black market, hoping that people choose to go from the back alley into their storefronts. Dwight.
Thank you, Ali. Now, the folks at Toronto Public Health are reminding cannabis users to keep their pot away from children.
I made this for you, so you can hang it up at work.
From the city's new ad campaign targeted at parents and caregivers, the message, if you're going to light up at home, keep your pot locked up and out of the reach of children. All right, Colette, we're waiting for some spring weather, and it's like we're back on this roller coaster, right? Some days up, other days down.
Yeah, we are on that roller coaster, especially when it comes to the temperatures, Dwight. So we've got the sunshine. It's like we get one ingredient in place. We're trying to get everything together at once. So we've got the sunshine, but the temperature's a little on the cool side. We're going to see things coupling up a little more nicely as we go through this week, at least for a portion of the week. So tomorrow we'll see the highs just a few degrees warmer than today. By the time we get to Wednesday, the temperature trend takes those temperatures anywhere. Hamilton, this model wants to take it up to 11. We'll say maybe 8 to 10 around the GTA in terms of what we'll be seeing. And then Thursday, the temperatures will still be on the mild side, but that's also when we're going to start to lose some of that sunshine as well, as things are going to change around a little bit for us. These are the current readings, though, out there. So it is a little bit on the cool side, 2 degrees right now, and Markham just at 1. Oshawa sitting at 2. There is a bit of a wind chill because we've had those winds coming out of the north, so it feels more like about -1 to -2. But that high pressure ensures we get all the sunshine during the day. It also means clear skies at night, and because of that, any little bit of heat we get, we don't have a blanket of insulation of clouds of any way to help us hold it in. So we lose that, but it's nice to see a couple of days, because this is such a dominant ridge over the Great Lakes, where we're going to have the clear skies. Now you can see as we go Wednesday night into Thursday, a little batch of some clouds moving through, more because we're going to see those winds changing direction, and then that allows this system, as high pressure leaves, this next one to move in, giving us some showery activity into Thursday. Overnight tonight, though, there it is, clear as a bell, -6 degrees. Tomorrow afternoon, 5 degrees. We'll take a closer look at that system that's going to be moving in a little later in the week when I come back, Dwight.
Loving the sunshine. Thank you, Colette.
Me too.
U.S. President Donald Trump says the release of special counsel report, Robert Mueller's full report, wouldn't bother him at all. The report summary released by Attorney General William Barr yesterday says Mueller didn't find Trump's campaign colluded with Russia to influence the 2016 presidential election. Trump talked about that today while hosting Israel's prime minister at the White House.
It was a false narrative. It was a terrible thing. We can never let this happen to another president again. I can tell you that. I say it very strongly.
But the report reached no conclusion on whether Trump obstructed justice, according to the summary, and that while it does not conclude he committed any crime, it also does not exonerate him. If Republicans and Democrats weren't divided enough already in the U.S., the summary of Mueller's report has pushed them even further apart.
It's very important that Mueller did not exonerate the president on obstruction of justice. In fact, after 2 years of investigation.
The New York Times' Kenneth Vogel joins us now from Washington. Kenneth, as we just heard, the president says he's okay with Mueller's full report being released. The Democrats also want that. So let's start with how likely it is that will happen.
If only it were that easy, Dwight. I think we're going to see a fight over how much of this will be released and when it will be released. The Attorney General already signaled in his summary letter that he sent to Congress that there would be a potentially long and arduous process to redact the report and figure out what could be released or what would be restricted potentially by rules surrounding grand jury testimony and other criminal procedure. Democrats, that's not good enough for them. They want it now because they are quite dissatisfied with this summary and the way that it's being seized upon by Donald Trump as a complete exoneration of him. They say, no, that's not the case. And in fact, the letter actually explicitly says that that's not the case when it comes to one key area, that being obstruction of justice. It says that there's evidence that supports that, but evidence that also sort of countervails that. So they want to see the evidence, and we're just seeing the beginnings, I think, of what could be a rather protracted fight over this.
So I guess your answer to the next question I'm about to ask you is no. So is the president in the clear now?
No, certainly not. I mean, he is legally in the clear when it comes to Mueller, yes. But there are other investigations that are proceeding apace in the Southern District of New York related to foreign money going to his inauguration, and other prosecutorial jurisdictions related to a super PAC and some of his associates. And then, of course, there is the possibility that the Mueller report, pieces of it do become public that reveal embarrassing, certainly politically damaging aspects of the investigation that, while not legally problematic for him, could be politically problematic headed into his 2020 re-election bid.
Is there any sense there, Kenneth, with Mueller's investigation now completed, that things in Washington might get back to normal, or is the status quo just the new normal under President Trump?
I think this is the new normal. We're in sort of a permanent both litigation and rhetorical fight. And President Trump, let's face it, is a willing player in this. He's out there now not only proclaiming himself exonerated, but also proclaiming himself to be the victim of a witch hunt, which is a comfortable position for him. He campaigned quite a bit in 2016 against these grievances, both real and perceived, that he had with the media and with the Democrats and with the Republican Party. Now we see sort of the contours of the grievances that he'll be prosecuting in his 2020 re-election race. He's even gone so far as to suggest that he might call for a counter-investigation into the roots of this investigation, with the suggestion being that there is some conspiracy against him within either the law enforcement community or intelligence community or the deep state, as he puts it. So we see already he's quite pleased with the results. He's not going to let it go. Democrats aren't going to let it go either.
I have a feeling we will be speaking about this again. The New York Times' Kenneth Vogel joining us from Washington tonight. Thank you, Kenneth.
Thank you for having me.
Shocked and lucky to be alive as more Hyundai and Kia owners say their engine burst into flames. Coming up, we'll bring you the Go Public investigation that has even more people now coming forward.
If everyone would just stayed asleep, my house would have been leveled.
I got away lucky because we weren't injured.
The weather update is brought to you by Train Extreme Conditions Testing. It's hard to stop a train, really hard. Train, the most reliable heating and cooling brand.
This deadly stage collapse is back in the spotlight after 7 years. Radiohead's drum technician died just before a concert was set to begin at Downsview Park. A coroner's inquest is now underway as Matt Nagaba-Selassie tells us Scott Johnson's family and friends are hoping for answers.
It's been nearly 7 years since the death of Scott Johnson, and for his father Kenneth,
The wounds are always open, to be honest. They don't go away, so.
he came from England and shared his pain on the first day of the inquest, looking into the circumstances of his son's death. Johnson, a drum technician for Radiohead, was on stage at Downsview Park on June 16, 2012, when the roof of the structure collapsed on him.
I think everybody would admit that mistakes have been made.
Today, the chief counsel for the coroner said this inquest will show there were deficiencies in how the stage was built. In all, 25 witnesses will testify. Radiohead drummer Philip Selway was among them today.
We feel a responsibility to Scott. We feel a responsibility to Mr. and Mrs. Johnson, to our crew, and to our audience as well, to actually keep pursuing this.
Previously, the Ontario Ministry of Labour laid charges, but it took too long to go through the courts, and they were stayed. Meanwhile, the inquest's goal is not to lay blame, but to come up with recommendations to prevent this from happening again.
I've worked in this industry for decades, and there's lots of other people who've worked in this industry, and it could have happened to any of us.
Justin Anthonys is with the International Alliance of Theatrical Stage Employees. He says things have started to change in the last few years.
There have been changes. I think there's been a lot more emphasis on safety. I think, you're seeing even events now based on how there's conferences on how there can be better safety at these types of events, anything from crowd control to rescue plans and everything in between.
He is watching this inquest closely to see if even more improvements can come out of it. This inquest could take a few weeks, and those involved are hopeful that the recommendations that come out of it could save other lives. Magda Gebre-Selassie, CBC News, Toronto.
An investigation by CBC's Go Public has prompted two big automakers to issue wide-ranging safety recalls. The problem is potentially life-threatening engine issues with Hyundai and Kia vehicles. Now the car makers are stepping up. A move one advocate calls a big victory for consumers. But not everyone is happy with this response. Rosa Marcatelli explains.
Chris Dietrich and his family woke up a few weeks ago to a neighbor pounding on the door, telling them flames were shooting out of their garage and closing in on the house. The engine in the family's 2015 Hyundai Tucson had spontaneously burst into flames.
If it weren't for our neighbors, we'd likely be dead because it was only minutes from our gas barbecue.
They aren't the only ones with a horror story like that. More stories of failures and fires with some engines have emerged since Go Public first reported on concerns around Hyundai and Kia's recall process, delays and missed models. Joseph Mickelson's 2013 Kia Sorento caught fire during a road trip. The engine had already been recalled once, replaced, and then recalled again.
Yeah, I got away lucky because we weren't injured.
Hyundai has the second highest number of reported engine fires, 21 over the past 3 years, according to Transport Canada. The car maker confirms 5 due to engine failure. This consumer advocate credits Go Public's investigation with pressuring Hyundai and Kia into action.
Since the original Go Public report, we've had some very good news, a massive expansion.
In fact, the car makers have done more to deal with the engine issues in the last couple of weeks than they have since the recall started 4 years ago, doubling the number of vehicles under recall and extending warranties for others. Hyundai says it's doing it out of an abundance of caution.
Then there are the lawsuits, one in Canada and more in the U.S.
There are numerous problems with these vehicles that the companies themselves admit they're recalling, but they don't have a fix for, which is astounding when you say it out loud.
The recalls may come too late for owners who no longer have vehicles. They're now dealing with their own insurance companies to cover the loss.
My family's lives are going to be disrupted, and my insurance company tells me it's going to be disrupted probably for another 2 to 3 months.
The two car makers have now recalled almost 3 million vehicles with potential engine issues in Canada and the U.S. Hyundai Canada says fires in its vehicles are very rare and that it actively monitors and evaluates potential safety concerns and acts swiftly. Kia says a vehicle's engine failure or fire can occur due to any number of complex factors, and it shouldn't be speculated that any are from a common vehicle issue. Rosa Marcatelli, CBC News, Calgary.
Preyed on in their own homes, a family is speaking out after it bought thousands of dollars of HVAC equipment it doesn't need. After the break, we'll tell you why they are blaming one of Canada's biggest financial institutions for allowing it to happen. A Toronto area man is accusing a major financial lender of allowing companies to prey on elderly people in their own homes. Financial lender Home Trust stopped buying HVAC rental contracts from a company in 2016 after it was charged with unfair practices. But CBC Toronto has learned Home Trust has continued to buy similar contracts from companies allegedly operating in the same way. Chris Glover has the CBC Toronto exclusive.
In his dad's Toronto basement,
so in here,
Howard Regan is disgusted at the sight of this equipment.
This UV light here that was hooked up, but isn't even plugged in. And I think that's $7,000 as well.
In 2017, he says a door salesman claiming to be with the gas company signed his 83-year-old dad up to rent an air filter. It set off a chain reaction of sales.
He had a newish furnace, newish air conditioner, didn't have any concerns about air filtration, and that contract was over 10 years for $14,400 for what appears to be a few $100s worth of equipment.
Since March 2018, door-to-door sales like these are against the law in Ontario, but in 2017, it was allowed.
Altogether, it seems to be about $5,000 to $7,000 worth of equipment, and he's paying $65,000 for it. And I don't think he wanted any of it. I don't think he understood what he was being asked or what he was signing.
In 2016, an HVAC retailer faced multiple charges for alleged unfair practices that were later dropped after a settlement was reached. Still, that September, one of Canada's largest financial lenders, Home Trust, committed to no longer buy rental agreements from the company. Regan's dad's contracts are with different HVAC companies, but are virtually the exact same. And in 2017, Home Trust bought 3 of them worth roughly $25,000. Home Trust then put liens on the equipment, and the home can't be sold until the liens are paid off.
It's so wrong. These people are clearly predatory. They're going after the elderly, people that don't quite understand what's going on. And without the lenders backing this up, it wouldn't happen. Great, thanks.
This paralegal represents clients who have Home Trust liens. He alleges HVAC companies trick people into renting products they don't need, with rental agreements costing significantly more than the products are worth.
They claim that it's all above board because it's on this fine print on the back of the document that the people sign, but the people are being deceived. And Home Trust needs to be held accountable.
Home Trust admits it took over these rental agreements even after halting the practice with the company that was charged in 2016. But in a new statement, the financial lender said it discontinued the practice altogether in September 2018. It wrote, "Our core lending business is providing mortgages, and we determined that this much smaller line of business was not a fit with that focus." While Home Trust stopped accepting these sorts of contracts in September 2018 for Howard Regan, whose dad got them prior, he says he's stuck with them. That's why he's prepping his dad's home for sale and paying off the liens.
It's terrible. It makes me sad for him that he had to go through this. He's worked hard his whole life, and it's wrong that someone should be preyed on like this in their own home.
While this family is financially prepared to handle this emotionally, he says it's taken quite a toll. Chris Glover, CBC News, Toronto.
And remember, if you have a story you would like us to look into, just send us an email, torontotips@cbc.ca. An Alberta judge has ruled that former Guantanamo Bay prisoner Omar Khadr has completed his sentence. Khadr made a brief statement after today's decision.
I'm really happy with the decision today, and I think it's been a while, but I'm happy it's here. And right now I'm gonna just try to focus on recovering and not worrying about having to go back to prison or, just struggling. So thank you so much.
A U.S. military commission convicted Khadr of killing an American soldier in Afghanistan and other charges. He was sentenced in 2010 and released on bail 5 years later. The court counted the nearly 4 years of conditional release as part of his 8-year sentence. Khadr is now free to apply for a passport and travel without seeking permission. His lawyer says he'll continue efforts to overturn Khadr's U.S. convictions. In Ottawa today, the start of a trial for former Afghanistan hostage Joshua Boyle. The Canadian is facing several assault charges. The partial lifting of a publication ban today revealed that his wife, Caitlin Coleman, is one of the alleged victims. Evan Dyer explains.
The accused in this case, Joshua Boyle, and the main alleged victim, Caitlin Coleman, are a married couple, best known for being held captive in Afghanistan for 5 years. The two of them were on a backpacking trip in Central Asia when they were kidnapped by the Haqqani Network, a criminal gang affiliated with the Taliban. And during those 5 years in captivity, they were frequently moved around in Afghanistan and perhaps also in Pakistan. And Caitlin Coleman gave birth to 3 children. They were in the news, of course, after their liberation. They returned to Canada and then retired to live quietly in Smith Falls, Ontario, the home of Joshua Boyle's parents, but came back into the news on New Year's 2018 when Joshua Boyle was arrested and subsequently charged by police with 19 offenses, including sexual assault and forcible confinement. 18 of those 19 charges relate to his wife, Caitlin Coleman, as the alleged victim. The 19th involves a victim who we can't identify by court order, and all of those offenses are alleged to have occurred while living in Smith Falls towards the end of 2017. Subsequently, Caitlin Coleman left Canada and went home to her family's place of origin, which is Pennsylvania. But she and her mother and sisters are expected to travel to Ottawa to testify in this court hearing. Already we've heard from the Crown that her credibility and coherence as a witness may be an issue in this trial, which began today with some expert testimony from a social worker. Evan Dyer, CBC News, Ottawa.
The number of people killed by Cyclone Idai in southern Africa has risen to at least 750. More than 500,000 people are still struggling just to survive 10 days after the storm came ashore. It has taken this long for aid organizations to marshal enough resources to help, and reaching those in need is difficult. The region is vast. It includes Mozambique, Madagascar, Malawi, and Zimbabwe. Much of it lies underwater, even kilometers inland. The floodwaters pose the hidden threat of waterborne diseases. The Red Cross describes the risk as a ticking time bomb for such illnesses as cholera, typhus, and malaria. Let's check in with Colette. Now, what's on your fancy board behind you there, Colette?
Oh, the almanac.
Oh, got it.
Yeah, where we get to look at all the different things like, hey, what's an average high for this time of year? 6.1. Where were we today? Around 3.4 unofficially, so we're not quite getting to where we should be at this time of year, but we're going to start to exceed that. So that's going to happen as we go through the next couple of days, and temperatures will be warming. Our average low is minus 3.3. And just a quick look at what's possible. I know we weren't anywhere near there, but it is possible to get to nearly 21 degrees. That happened. That's the record high for this date in history. Back in 2000 is where that one comes from. Not near 20 degrees right now, 2 degrees out there. In fact, Hamilton a little bit milder. You can double it there until, of course, you factor in the winds. We've had that northerly flow, and from that direction, it does feel cooler, like -2 here in the city. High pressure, though, in place does mean we have not only clear skies and all that beautiful sunshine through the day, but we have the clear skies at night as well, and it protects us all across the Great Lakes. Systems off to the northeast, to the southeast, back to the west of us. We're staying in the clear, and it means no active weather either for the next little while. So even as we head through Tuesday, we'll see sunshine. Now, Tuesday night into Wednesday, as that ridge moves off towards the east, we get into a different flow in terms of what we're seeing with the winds. May bring in a little bit of cloud cover, but then the sun comes back until we go Wednesday into Thursday. And then it looks like Thursday we'll see increasing cloudiness. That ridge will break down, and then the next batch of showers will be moving through. But I want to show you what the temperatures will be looking like when we get there. First of all, though, tonight's temperatures, -6 to -7, St. Catharines -5, feeling like about -10 to -12. So it is a cool start for you on Tuesday. The temperatures getting a little bit warmer than today. In fact, pretty close to seasonal. And then we go to Wednesday, and they get above seasonal, 8 degrees. We still have that sunshine, and temperatures on the mild side Thursday and Friday. It's just that in between there, we have to welcome in some showers that are going to be coming back. So spring showers on the way, but a couple of really nice days before that, Dwight.
Almost gardening time, I tell you. Thanks, Colette.
Yeah, always you've got work for us to do.
I think it will serve as a continuing and stronger magnet for the world's smartest people to come here to Toronto and to study here, to teach here, to research here, to work here, and to live here. And I think that is vital to the success of our city and our country.
U of T is getting a $100 million boost. Coming up, my conversation with the Canadian power couple who's donating that money. We'll talk about what inspired them to step up. The University of Toronto received a historic investment today. Gerald Schwartz and Heather Reisman are giving the university $100 million. That's the largest ever donation to the school. Their gift will help build the Schwartz-Reisman Innovation Center. And I sat down with Canada's power couple in an exclusive TV interview to hear why this specific project now.
University of Toronto is clearly an exceptional institution, not only in Canada, but in the world. And it's our hometown. So Toronto is our hometown. But this was a unique opportunity to do something that is at the absolute nexus of what Jerry and I believe. This major initiative will create housing and infrastructure and energy for technological innovation coupled with the human implication of what this technology is doing with us and for us. So that crossover, right, between how technology is evolving and how we as people want to evolve, that is at the heart of what this initiative is about. And the chance to bring those two things together is just irresistible for Jerry and me. Irresistible.
I'm not sure if it was a Heather's pick, but I just finished reading Sapien. And,
and
he talks about
Heather's pick. Heather's pick.
Right? He talks about the importance of studying the implications of the emerging technology. What do you hope that this then institute will do for that?
I think that we see an example of it every day in front of us. We don't even know where our data is going, and that's not what we signed up for. And the impact on people is enormous. And there has to be, we have to look closely, carefully at what happens with new technologies that change how we live and operate. But they have huge impacts on us that if we aren't careful, those impacts will simply take over.
It has implications, philosophical implications, legal implications, health implications. I mean, literally every area of our life. And I think the point that we are so fascinated by, our brains develop very slowly over millennia. Mm-hmm. Technology is advancing, warp speed.
Really is.
And so how do we make sure that we get to control what happens to us as humans? Yeah. That's what the whole idea of this is. And by the way, it was conceived way before we ever got the idea for this. It was U of T's leadership.
And you say, this is your town, this is our town. We are becoming a leader in the world when it comes to tech and innovation. Are you looking for a leadership role then with this?
It's interesting that you say leadership because, yes, we're excited because it's Toronto and so we can watch every bit of its evolution. But Toronto, and by extension Canada, is at the very center of what's happening with artificial intelligence.
Seems that way, yeah.
It's just our wonderful good fortune that some of the great brains in the world are here, want to come here. And of course, Jeffrey Hinton, who is renowned in the world for his work in the area of machine learning and neural nets, he is here at University of Toronto.
I think it's really important for researchers working on the social implications of AI to have a deep understanding of this highly disruptive and rapidly changing technology. By far the best way to achieve this is to house the people working on social implications in the same building as the researchers who are developing the basic technology.
Starting something from scratch is extremely difficult, but accelerating something that's already naturally there is easy to do. And I think that our gift will help to accelerate the base that's already there in AI in particular, machine learning, neural networks, all of those areas, and by bringing people together, not just university professors, but business people, young people starting new businesses based on these technologies. We're adding to the opportunity to create some real mass here, and not simply the people that are here, but the people who will be attracted to come here.
To play a small role in reinforcing Canada's opportunity to remain a leader in the world, wow, it's great.
I want to add one thing to it, and that is that we did approach the university. The university had the idea of building innovation centers, but the person who brought together the idea of ethics and society and the impact is Heather.
It's really exciting. I guess they're both a congratulations and a thank you here. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks for
Pleasure
being
meeting
here.
you both.
Wonderful, just wonderful.
Right, thanks.
Starting today, you will be able to see Indigenous art on billboards and bus stops across the city. A group called Artists Against Racism is launching the campaign in response to the late Gord Downey's call for action. The campaign is called Eagles Rising, and it kicked off today at Riverdale Collegiate. Take a look.
We're launching Eagles Rising to do something on a massive scale, to spread awareness of the great wisdom, spirituality, culture, environmental knowledge, and more that the First Peoples of Canada have to offer us.
Can we get low down? I come from 7 generations of iron workers, skywalkers. Those are the men that built North America into the sky. You know, I don't know if you've ever seen that famous photograph, those guys eating their lunch up on a girder 50 stories high. It's a very famous photograph of men building Rockefeller Center. The 4th guy in on that photograph is my grandfather.
Be brave with your crazy hair, be crazy like nobody's there, be happy.
I've joined in order to serve this moment because the Apple platform allows me to do what I do in a whole new way, to take everything I've learned about connecting to people to the next level. Because they're in a billion pockets, y'all, a billion pockets.
Oprah Winfrey announcing she's on board with Apple, specifically the launch of Apple TV Plus, their new streaming service. The company also announced a new gaming bundle and a new service called Apple News Plus. So, what does Apple TV Plus mean for us consumers? Yelena knows. She's here to sort it all out for us. Big announcement today.
Goodness, this was not just a corporate announcement, Dwight. This was a rock show. They had Sarah Bareilles. She played on stage. They also had so much celebrity power. They turned this into a cult-like event, as only Apple could do. And wow, you know, you saw there on the clip with Oprah, $1 billion pockets, y'all. And who else is in the pocket? Well, let's take a look, because Steven Spielberg was another major name that they brought out. He announced a big show that he's going to be doing. And they also showed J.J. Abrams as well as Ron Howard, this black and white kind of scene that you're seeing here. They wanted to set up the idea that, hey, let everybody else give you the quantity. We're going to give you the quality, right? And so they're really trying to amp up this message of original programming. And you got to see a lot of that celebrity star power. Let's talk a little bit more about that because we've got Jennifer Aniston. You saw a glimpse of her there. She's in a new show with Reese Witherspoon, and the two of them together, they got on stage with Steve Carell. And Dwight, they're going to be taking in each $1.1 million per episode for this new show that they're going to be doing. And it's called The Morning Show. And the two of them are going to be talking about, the show is all about the idea of behind the scenes between men and women as they put on a typical kind of a morning show. But then, so that's Jennifer Aniston, Reese Witherspoon, but you've also got Octavia Spencer on board, as well as Chris Evans, Brie Larson, Jennifer Garner. And, you know, I have to give you a clip from Kamal Nanjiani, the comedian. He's got a new show, and it is all about the immigrant experience in America. He says that most of the people who are in front of the screen as well as behind the screen happen to be immigrants themselves, or at least second-generation immigrants to America, and he just wants to show stories that you don't normally get to see. That's what Apple is also pitching. Have a listen to Nanjiani.
We hope Little America will help viewers understand that there is no such thing as the other, there is only us. Which is why at this moment in history, we are excited that we get to tell these stories with Apple. Connecting humanity is in their DNA.
Do we need another streaming service? That's the other question.
Netflix, Hulu, not just that, but we also know from everything from HBO, YouTube, and now getting into the game, Disney.
That's right,
as well as
yeah.
NBC. It's just incredible the amount of competition that's out there. We still don't know the price yet for how much this plus of Apple TV Plus is going to cost us. We know the gaming portion, for example, was around $9.99 per month. In Canada, that's $12.99. So we've yet to see what they're going to charge for the streaming portion of all of this. If they are going to be doing this, we know that they're kicking it off in the fall, so we have until then to decide if we are on board.
As Oprah said, they're in our pockets, and they got us. Thanks,
Oh, get out your wallets or your Apple phones.
believe it.
See you soon.
That's just what we need. Give more money to Apple. Okay, you're looking live at a shot of your beautiful skyline tonight. It was a sunny, warm day yesterday. Do we have more days like that coming up this week? Colette will join us one last time with a look at our forecast. Stay with us. We will be right back. Now that's a very cool reveal. So very excited young Raptors fans got to meet their heroes today. Kids between the ages of 6 and 14 celebrating the second anniversary of the MLSE Launchpad. With the Raptors, the Moss Park Gym offers free sports programs to kids in the neighborhood.
It is very inspiring getting to see people that you look up to and your role models and asking them questions that you might not ever be able to.
It's weird, you know. It's the reason they think we're like Marvel character heroes or something because we can play basketball.
Are you excited to meet these guys?
Yeah. Why? Because they look nice.
That is a great answer, kid. The children got to rock climb with Danny Green, snap a pic with OG Anunoby, play floor hockey with Norm Powell, and even cook with Serge Ibaka. Since opening its doors in 2017, Launchpad has introduced nearly 5,000 kids facing barriers to sports. Very We've got artists watching this show because our viewers sent us the coolest pic. And here's another one. This one was taken by Kurt Wang. Great skyline shot. Look at all the ice on the lake, though, Khaled Kennedy. Hopefully it's going to be going soon. Get your photos to us by posting them on Twitter or Instagram with the hashtag CBCOurGTA. And we'll, of course, air some of them on the show. You like that one?
I like that one. It's another one with those like donuts of ice because of the currents and the waves
and
that we see.
you've explained to me why they form.
Yeah.
Yes, I remember that lesson. Don't test me, though. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and the Raptors, that was a good story, too.
Very
I love
cool.
It. I love it.
Yeah, I got to tell the viewers this. I know we're running out of time, but she sends me pictures of selfies with the Raptors all the time just to make me jealous. Let's continue.
It's not true.
Yes, it is.
It's not even
I'm going to show
true.
you the evidence tomorrow.
Well, what I can show you, and what is true, is
Yes.
to look at the forecast that we have for you in terms of high pressure in place, -6 tonight. It's going to feel like -12, so a cool start tomorrow morning, but then 5 degrees with all kinds of sunshine. We're going to see that sunshine for a couple of days, Dwight, so it's looking nice, and what gets better is that the temperature is going to climb a little bit, too, each day. So by midweek, we're talking about 9, maybe 10 degrees.
We'll take it.
Oh, I'm taking it, too.
That's it for us today. Thank you for watching. Mike Wise has your next local newscast at 11. We will see you back here tomorrow at 6.